complimented you the other day. He goes, oh, no, Chris did. Jordan's got great taste in music. Yeah, well, hey. Stock market. All right, well, they screwed that up. All right, go ahead. It's cool. They just tell me right now, literally right now. Anyway, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com on the Contrary show, presented by Prize Picks. I'm Dave Lockren, bringing you another week 3 edition, breaking everything down from maybe a contrarian angle based on the name. Anyway, Steve Buzzard, you know this man, the Colts, Millie Maker, 2-time Millie Maker winner or one?
I wish. We're getting there.
Steve Buzzard, the Colts, you know the man from many shows he's done and a ton of amazing work he's done on all of our tools behind the scenes, and also probably from seeing him atop the leaderboard, filling in today admirably for Alex Baker, who just tied the knot yesterday. And Steve, in the hotel room, was attending that wedding. Hey, Steve.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for having me. Good. It's good to be here. You get a little bit of the B team here without Alex, but hopefully we can come with some strong takes. Week 3 is the week that I did win the Million Maker a couple years back, so hopefully we'll be able to run it back, and you're just foreseeing things a little bit to get that second one. And I think we have a good one. I think there's a lot of stuff going on this week, and I think we can have a really good time.
No doubt. And I'm in my own office because I wasn't invited. I'm just kidding. I swear to God, I'm just kidding. Well, I'm not kidding about that part, but there would be no reason to. Anyway, very happy to have with us Kyle Dvorak, showing his face again at Awesemo. Happy to have him back, coming off a fresh $200,000 win in the MLB Millie Maker, came very close to first place. Man, Kyle, good to have you back, man. It's nice to see your face.
Yeah, I have, 1/5 as many Millie Makers as Steve. But I probably also share now the honor of losing to Whistles Goes Woo, who's been taking everyone's money for the past 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, the guy wins a lot. And by the way, if you want to check out all of Kyle's work, he's full-time now over at NBC Sports Edge. So check out everything he's doing there. Very sharp fella. You know him from last year. We did the ownership show and Top Stack show, right?
That's what we did together. I was with Alex on Monday and Thursdays. I was with Matt on Thursday mornings. Maybe like one other show.
Yeah, you did a lot of shit. You were doing a lot of like the live before locks and stuff too for the primetime games. Yeah,
I did all 3 live before locks, I think, for all 3 primetime games.
Oh, then you were with EMAC on Sunday.
EMAC on Sunday,
That's
Alex
right.
on Monday, Thursday.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, anyway,
I loved your showdown shows for sure. So everyone should definitely check out the showdown stuff in general. It's a lot of fun.
It is, except unless you had Christian McCaffrey on Thursday, which a lot of people
you made your own bet on that one.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but it was a full out McCaffrey fade was a pretty difficult thing to do. If you did it though, it worked. Anyway, that game was just miserable.
That's why they're so fun.
Yeah, I know. I watched every second of it. But
how could you watch every second of a Davis Mills game?
I became dumber. Like, you know, the Billy Madison scene where they're doing the trivia. That's what I felt like afterwards. I just lost IQ points after watching that game, but it is what it is. We got a lot of games to talk about, a lot of fun games to talk about too. And we'll jump into all of them. But first, happy to have you with us. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, go ahead and do so. Only takes a second, and it helps us a ton. We're almost at 60,000 subscribers here on the channel. Thanks to you guys supporting us over the last 4 years that we've been doing this. So subscribe, hit that thumbs up. And if you want to know when all of our shows go live, hit that notification bell as well. All right, let's dive into it. Both of you guys pretty new to the show. Well, Steve's done it before, but filling in for Alex. And Kyle, I'm not sure if you've done On the Contrary before. Let's kick it off with you. So tomorrow, everything throughout the week culminates in a 4-hour live stream, and we go game by game. We do everything. With this, we're going to hit on some interesting games and some spots that might be chalky or we think should be popular but aren't, and we're going to get to. I want to start with Indy and Tennessee, though. Kyle, they're 5.5-point dogs on the road. Carson Wentz somehow miraculously is practicing with double sprained ankles. Who knows if he plays what he's going to look like? But 5.5 points, 48.5 point total. And one guy that you specifically talked about before we got together right now was Jonathan Taylor. I actually want to start with him because the guy leads the league in goal line carries just from an efficiency standpoint, and the ability to punch it into the end zone hasn't been able to do much at all.
Yeah, he leads the league in goal line carries. I think that is probably because it was either last week or week one. He literally had one goal line stand where they gave it to him 2, if not all 3 times. And I believe they got 4 and outed on the goal line.
Yeah.
So, maybe skews his numbers a little bit because you think if he punches one in, it is a success that reduces his numbers. But nonetheless, the fact that they were just willing to just hammer this poor guy into the goal line, into the backs of his offensive linemen, probably does say something about how they want to play the football. And he does lead the league in at least running backs in expected fantasy points. Also, last in the league in expected fantasy points over expectation because of all those goal line stuffs. And I think it's probably not a good spot for him. He's an underdog. I don't think his team's going to be able to put up a ton of points, but I don't care if it's not a good spot because I think he is perfectly negatively correlated with someone like Derrick Henry. And I think the obvious play this week is that Carson Wentz, who's probably bad anyways, with 2 sprained ankles, the Titans defense, 2,400 on DraftKings, correlate with that with Derrick Henry and then build the rest of your lineup. But in a Millie Maker type scenario, if that's what we're gunning for, the week 3 repeat, finding some negative correlation with that incredibly obvious play, that's ideal. That's what you want. If you're going to have Derrick Henry as the most popular back, the second or third most popular back, I think at a minimum, Titans defense, everyone's favorite punt play. In the off chance that Jonathan Taylor, like he did at the end of last year, has one of these monstrous 200 some yard games, 3 touchdowns, you kill off like 20% of lineups so easily. He's a perfect negative correlation play with what I think the obvious, Titans Derrick Henry stack is going to be. So I don't love the spot. I don't love that his backup, Nyheim Hines, takes away a decent chunk of the passing game work. But I love the fact that I think he's the perfect on the contrary type of play. I think he'll be perfectly negatively correlated as much as 2 players can be outside of just defense versus a quarterback with the chalkiest running back of the week potentially.
Snap answer. Would you rather have Carson Wentz on 2 literal stumps or Jacob Eason?
I think Jacob Eason, like the pro comp would be Carson Wentz, but kind of stumpy. So I'll just say Carson Wentz, but they have to be so similar. That has to be like you have to think Mel Kiper was like, yeah, I like Jacob Eason. He reminds me of stumped Carson Wentz. Like that would have been the comp.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it really would be pretty comparable, Steve, but I mean, it's a weird game because on the other side of this one too, you've got guys like AJ Brown who, the eruptions are coming if they can protect Ryan Tannehill. And then Derrick Henry, just an insane explosion last week, ties Julio Jones for the lead in receptions with 6, like 41 touches. And then Julio proved to the world, and thank God, because I would have looked real dumb if he didn't, that he is not washed whatsoever. And I think that should have been a touchdown. But both sides of this game are kind of interesting for very different reasons.
Yeah, so that game was pretty wild last week. Derrick Henry is like the guy that is out to kill me every time. It feels like I did have another shot at one of the big wins last week until Derrick Henry just kept going and some of the Arizona guys didn't so much. So I'll probably I think this time Derrick Henry does make some sense to go to, but I think he's going to be overowned based off of that performance. I do like all the ideas there that Kyle was throwing out with the going against Derrick Henry, because the Titans defense does make a lot of sense to correlate with Derrick Henry. So no doubt that a lot of people are going to go that route and do that type of a thing. And if you want to, be able to win one of the contests, going against him with Jonathan Taylor makes a lot of sense. Also going against him with AJ Brown makes a lot of sense as well. Brown has kind of started the season a little bit slow with only not topping 50 yards in either of the first 2 games. And I think you might get some people thinking that's only due to Julio Jones right now. But he's still being targeted a fair amount of times, 8 and 9 targets in both of those games. So I think you could see a little bit of a bounce back. Julio looks pretty good. I think the offense overall looks pretty good. And there's lots of ways that they can do well without Derrick Henry. So I think I'm going to probably be a little bit on the Derrick Henry fade. I learned my lesson not to fade him 100% like I did last week. I'll probably get a few shares of him in there, but I'm more on the AJ Brown and Julio Jones type of side this time. One thing I do worry about, and I think that is like I said, all the stuff I agree with on Jonathan Taylor, but the thing I am a little bit worried about is that they may want to have a lot of dump offs to Hines, just because any of the quarterbacks, they actually elevated Hundley as well today from the practice squad. So any of the quarterbacks that they end up using, I think, are going to have trouble going, much deep into the field, and they're just don't have a lot of super playmakers either. So they might be using Hines a little bit more than what you would expect typically from this offense. And so I'm a little bit concerned on that end from Taylor only.
Kyle, I don't want to spend too much time in this game because we got so many juicy ones to get to. But one thing I found really interesting was the difference in Pittman's usage from week 1 to week 2, because in week 1, he didn't see a single target more than 20 yards downfield. In week 2, he saw 4 deep ball targets. I mean, when you start seeing opportunities like that, you know that you can have those big games like he did. And look, Pittman had a really, really solid game, targeted 11 times, 4 times down, 20 plus yards downfield. If Wentz does play and word is like, hey, he's okay. Are you? Yeah. Like I say, he's going to look like a baby deer that just came out and is learning to hobble around. But do you think that Pittman makes any sense after seeing last week and his rapport with Carson Wentz?
I think Pittman's perfectly fine. I'm not like dying to get Pittman, but I do think he projects as the guy to be the team's leader in target share and air yard share. Like I just like as Steve said, like the team's playmakers are like outside of Pittman would be like Jack Doyle and Zach Pascal. Like I just can't get on board with the idea of those guys earning really significant target share. So Pittman makes sense. He probably also would correlate if you're trying to play your Titans. This is just a game that I'm really only trying to find the Derrick Henry leverage points. So I'm not trying to invest too heavily into it outside of, I love the AJ Brown call too. He still leads the team in target share, leads the team in air yard share, leads the team in red zone targets, and leads the team in end zone targets, especially those red zone and end zone targets. If you get 130 yards from Derrick Henry, but he just doesn't find the end zone, you get the double AJ Brown score because they're using him as if he can be a multi-touchdown guy. That'd be another way to ideally leverage. But I think like Derrick Henry's good. He's a great player. And if he catches passes, he'll probably just kill me every week. But if he's going to be the most popular running back on the slate, I think that is beatable. I think it'll be more so. So Pittman's fine. I do think he's more of if you're trying to get a ton of pieces in this game, and I'm trying to just find ways to pivot off Derrick Henry.
Yeah, dude, if Derrick Henry is running 20 routes a game, like just call it a night.
Just like after like what 6 years of his career too, some coaches like, I don't know, maybe we should get the super giant, the 6'3" guy who's 250 pounds, runs a 4.43. Maybe we should put him on some of these 5'9" corners. Maybe that makes sense. And no one's ever thought of it somehow.
I know, it's amazing, especially when you consider it's like, okay, well, it's not James White or Naeem Hines. It's Jeremy McNichols. So I don't know. The only good argument, and let's move on here, but the only good argument that I've heard about it is like, well, the guy already touches the ball 30 times per game, so we want to keep him off the field once in a while. But aside from that, he's actually not a terrible pass catcher.
No.
Steve, Atlanta, New York, Giants laying 3 at home, 47.5 point total. I keep hearing a ton of talk about Daniel Jones and the rushing upside, which is perfectly like, yeah, he has legit rushing upside. He can break them. But Barkley went from playing less than 50% of snaps to like 88 or so percent. I forget the exact number, but he played he played 84% of snaps in week 2 on 3 days rest. Now he's got 9 days rest. Like, do we see this as a spot where they're favored and maybe you don't need to have Daniel Jones running as much, even improvised runs? And what are you doing with with Saquon? Because I think this is a huge talking point that we need to get drilled down for week 3. Sorry.
Yeah, especially Saquon on FanDuel at 6,000 is just such a
crazy
cheap price. I think you kind of lock him in on cash games. That's not a very contrarian take, but I think that's a pretty safe one to go to. And I think you can go with him pretty overweight on FanDuel too, because his ownership isn't that high. So I think that the team is feeling a little bit more confident with him playing those 84% of snaps. I know they kind of wanted to ease him into the season, but the fact that they were able to go 84% on short rest, I think that means, hey, I think we are good on him and he's ready to go. So I think that that's a good spot. Atlanta defense for years has been awful. The thing that's been their saving grace is that Matt Ryan has been able to keep them in games to keep up with their defense. The problem this year is they've not had that luxury. Matt Ryan hasn't been nearly as good. So one thing you could see is the Giants get out to a nice lead. Hopefully that's by Saquon scoring a touchdown or two. If they do get too far in the lead, they may be able to rest those. The line doesn't suggest that that's going to be the case, but it does worry me a little bit that Atlanta is, kind of on the downspin a little bit, and they may end up at some point trying to tank out the season. I don't know if they're there yet, but it's just kind of in the back of my head a little bit. Not that the Giants are a team that's going to go out and blow everyone away either. So I do think that Daniel Jones also makes a fair amount of sense. Stacking him with guys like Sterling Shepard is a really good stack. I think Shepard's been playing really well to start off the season. He's been getting a lot of targets. Kenny Galladay is opening up the field a little bit more than what they have had the field open recently. So I think that he makes a lot of sense. The price point to stack Shepard and Daniel Jones together is really pretty affordable, and you can run him back with Calvin Ridley. There's the run backs on Atlanta are not super deep, so I think that is certainly a good option. Or additionally, even Kyle Pitts as well, who continues to see his snaps increase. He played about 79% of the snaps this last week. So I think you have a good whole game stack that you could run pretty easily on this game, especially when all the other games are kind of going to be a lot higher targets than what you might see in this game. So yeah, I think overall it's a pretty good play.
Yeah, Kyle, it's crazy though, and Steve kind of alluded to it. Barkley's the 8th highest priced running back on DraftKings, 9th highest priced on FanDuel. Or I'm sorry, 9th highest priced on Yahoo, and 19th highest priced running back on FanDuel. You're obviously going to get ownership there. You're already getting some on DraftKings. What do we do with Barkley in this specific spot against an Atlanta defense that's just been annihilated in back-to-back games to start the season?
Yeah, I think he's like the same price as Cordell Patterson on FanDuel. If I have that correct, he's like 100. Right? Like Cordell Patterson, a literal kick returner who sometimes gets a carry and a target.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
Saquon Barkley, who is like really the only running back who has ever stood a chance of looking like Christian McCaffrey.
Well, you're right. He is. He's $100 more expensive. Yeah.
I was pretty sure it was FanDuel. That's
crazy.
It's Saquon freaking Barkley. It actually blows my mind that like Saquon Barkley, Steve said isn't even going to be like mega chalk on FanDuel, right? He deserves to be. This isn't like Taysom Hill tight end levels, but it is potentially like if we even see 80% of what we've seen from Saquon Barkley in the past, which like you said, that was his snap share almost exactly. It was like you said, 84. They doubled his snap total from week 1 to week 2, 29 to 58, I believe.
On 3 days rest.
Yeah, exactly. And now he gets the longer rest. This isn't, Taysom Hill tight end, but it is an incredibly egregious price. So like on FanDuel, if he's not going to be the most popular running back by leaps and bounds, I would just jam him in. It doesn't seem to make any sense to not do that to me if you're going to get any sort of ownership discount on a player who, like I said, he is probably the closest thing we've seen to Christian McCaffrey, the way he was used in his first 2 years before being banged up more recently. Even on DraftKings, I'm fine just playing a decent amount of him, given that, if we end up pushing on to, maybe a game with a Los Angeles team and a Tampa Bay team, I will have some very contrarian takes on a game like that. I've already found places that I think are good pivots off of Derrick Henry. So I don't think this is, chalk I'm willing to eat. I think every lineup has a different construction. You can play good Derrick Henry lineups, but I've just made my decision that I think there are good pivot points off Derrick Henry, less so with Saquon Barkley, because I think he's just such a good price adjusted play.
All right, Kyle, let me stick with you for a second and then go over to Steve. With the Chargers and Kansas City Chiefs, you got a 54.5 point total. The Chiefs, once again, and Steve, you've seen this a million times, they're breaking the top stack tool just in terms of like every week, they have the highest top stack probability by a mile and then also the highest leverage score. So like there's just, you're never going to see anything like it. But Kyle, on the Chargers side of this game, I know they have a negative leverage score on our top stacks tool, but on a site like DraftKings, they're all, I don't want to say cheap, and I know they haven't been great to start the year, but you're getting all mid-range price points on Mike Williams, on Keenan Allen, on Justin Herbert, on Jared Cook, on everybody, right? Like Austin Eckler in a game that has a 54.5 point total. Is this a spot that you want to get to this week, either as run backs in Kansas City stacks or full stacks with Kansas City run backs or even just solo stacks?
Yeah, last week the Chargers ran really, really bad in the red zone. They had 2 touchdowns called back, one to Donald Parham, blessed be the XFL's best, and then one to Jared Cook. They had, I believe, a red zone interception and then a short field goal they kicked. There was, I mean, obviously the total implied this last week. It was the highest total of the week. There was a very close potential for them to have scored 4 or 5 touchdowns, and it just didn't come together. My only concern with Justin Herbert is he isn't running as much as he did last year. He can still get there. He's an incredible passer. And just like, Steve talked about, which I love with the Falcons, is that if you play a Falcons player as a run back to a Daniel Jones stack, you have like a 50-50 shot of getting it right because they throw to 2 guys. They also lost Russell Gage. Russell Gage hasn't been very apparent in 2 weeks, but maybe he could have been. Now he can't be. The same thing is true with the Chargers. There are really 2 guys, a third if you want to throw in Jared Cook, in terms of the non-running backs that you would use as run backs. I think I'm perfectly fine just playing Patrick Mahomes and using the Justin Herbert side as run backs, but I could perfectly be talked into saying like, oh, just take the team that'll probably have to be forced to throwing more with Justin Herbert is really good on a price adjusted basis. I think they're like a similar price to stack as sort of like the Stafford stack, maybe a 1,000 or so more. But I think their odds are, their ownership is going to be so much lower than the ownership of just like the chalk, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford with like a Chris Godwin run back. So for me, because this game, I think comes in with a fraction of the ownership of the game of what I think will be the most popular game of the week, at least that Stafford versus Brady duel. I'm attacking this game mostly from the home side, but really from all sides. I'll probably still have some Herbert, more Mahomes, but overall, this I think is the game to target over that other game, simply based on ownership. If it was flipped, if this was the most popular game of the week by leaps and bounds, I would say, oh, let's just play, maybe this Tom Brady guy can put something together. Who knows? But on the other hand, if it's not going to be as popular, I'm just going to take a game that, the totals on these games are nearly identical. I think it's 55.5 for the Tampa Bay game. And then the Chiefs game is 54.5. But the ownership, I think, will probably skew a bit more towards that Stafford side. I know Awesemo has him as the highest owned quarterback of the week.
Steve, kind of remarkable that last year I expected, because I have a bad memory, I expected to look back and be like, yeah, Justin Herbert, because I knew he faced the Kansas City Chiefs twice, had to throw a lot. But that actually wasn't the case. Herbert was wildly efficient, though. Averaged almost 10 yards per attempt in 2 games, 300 yards on 31 attempts, 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing score. And that was like week 3. The guy had just started 1 game before that. And then to close out the year, I can't remember if that was week 16. 33 attempts, 311 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and a rushing score. 2 of his best games on the season came against Kansas City. And I don't like to look back and use that as a reason to play him. But I do think that just these high scoring atmospheres can really be conducive, as we know, even if it's not a high volume play like it was in either of those games last year.
Yeah, and I think it could actually be a little bit more volume even this year. So if he does keep that type of efficiency, I do think that he makes a really good play. One thing, I think the Chargers are a bit better this year. I think they're one of the better teams really in the AFC. The problem is there's so many good teams in that Western division that they're going to have a tough time to really make the playoffs. So this is not going to be an easy game to win by any means, and I wouldn't expect them to do so, but it's going to be a really key game for their season. We saw Baltimore really pushing the envelope, being very aggressive against this Kansas City team, same way that you used to see a lot of times against the Peyton Manning whenever he was on either the Broncos or the Colts. Teams just know that they were going to have to put up a fair amount of points to keep up with him. And I think that's what you're starting to see with Mahomes, and teams are going to be very aggressive. So I got to imagine that Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jared Cook, all those guys are going to see a good amount of targets. I really like Eckler in this spot because I do think that they're going to just keep dumping it off to him to keep the chains moving. If they can, Keenan Allen is always in play for sure. So I do like going with a Herbert stack, or if you really just think that it's in comeback mode against Mahomes and that offense, I do think that these are really good. I agree with what Kyle is saying, that this is probably the game that I prefer to target over the Tampa Bay game, and it might be kind of a really nice pivot. So I guess Jared Cook is also, I didn't mention him as much, but he's really nice on DraftKings in general. the pricing is fairly tight, I would say, this week. We don't have a $6,000 Saquon that we can go to on DraftKings to just help us save a lot of money. So saving money at the tight end position is a pretty good path to take this week, and I think Jared Cook is a pretty safe option for that. He's been very involved in the passing game, and I think you could definitely look there and have a lot better success than a lot of the other guys at lower price tags.
Antoine Murphy, I would love to know why Deshaun Jackson is better than Van Jefferson this week. Outside of the fact that Deshaun Jefferson played 3 snaps to Jefferson's 59 last week or 54. Well, I'm sure there's a very good reason for that, lightning in a bottle type shit, I guess. But anyway, Kyle, there's a lot of games we want to hit on here. And I want to, for a second, just stick with the Chiefs because, and I thought you brought up some good points too, talking about, you look at some of the totals and not just like Tampa Bay, LA has basically an identical total to LA, Chargers, Kansas City. And then Seattle, Minnesota also has basically an identical total. There's 3 games this week that have really high totals. And then you get into like Arizona, Jacksonville, which is pretty fun to talk about. And then Baltimore, Detroit are north of 50 as well. But on the Kansas City side, and the reason I always say they break the top stack tool is because like even on a value standpoint, they are by far the highest value score in the top stack tool, despite on the surface looking like horrible value, just by the naked eye, they're so expensive. Top stack percentage higher than any other team. Leverage score way higher than any other team. It's not even close. But the ownership is always much lower than all of these because it's hard to fit all of them into a stack, especially if you're going Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill. So really the big question, and I'm sure other people are wondering the same thing, is do we look towards a Mecole Hardman? Do you take random shots on a Pringle who scored last week or like a Robinson? Are any of these guys viable in large field tournaments in order to make this stack work with Mahomes and one of his top players in Kelsey and Hill?
Yeah, right now, Hardman playing like 73% of the team's snaps. I don't think they have a clear defined, he hasn't cemented himself as the clear defined number 2 wide receiver. He probably never will because like he came out of college as like a gadgety punt returner or whatever. So you're probably never going to turn that guy into your clear cut number 2 wide receiver. Unlike Sammy Watkins, who just played 90% of the snaps last year and turned that into one good game consistently, like a hero, Sammy Watkins. You're never going to get that type of role, but you don't need to because he is much more explosive and probably a better receiver, producing yards after the catch, producing deep like splash plays. So I'd be fine going to Mecole Hardman. He looks like not a solidified like every snap wide receiver 2, but he's improving upon last year in terms of the routes he's running, the snaps he's getting. And I just thought it was really interesting. Like, I feel like the top stacks tool for the Chiefs is just a flow chart that says, should I play the Chiefs this week? And then it says, is Patrick Mahomes the highest owned quarterback of the slate? And if you answer no, it's like, yes, you can absolutely play the Chiefs this week. If there are tons of like pay down, we have the backup running back comes in and a good punt wide receiver. So everyone's like, let's pay up for Kelsey. Let's pay up for Hill. Let's pay up for Mahomes. Maybe you look to change it up there. But anytime Patrick Mahomes doesn't come in at like 13% ownership, you have the green light to just like jam him. And the Tyreek Hill is doing the same thing. You guys have him at like a 11% ownership right now. Like we literally know he is one of like 5 players in the league to be able to put up 50 some odd points in a game, and he's going to be 10% owned. Like I think this is exactly what we're talking about that makes this game the ideal pivot, is that it has probably as much, if not more upside than the Chargers game, or not the Chargers, the Rams game. But it's going to be because of pricing. Like, of course, they don't project as good of values. It's so much easier to get in 6 something K Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford who's 6,400. Sure, it's easier to get those guys in. But at the end of the day, we do need to score raw points. You have to at some point pivot from trying to find value in your lineup to trying to find 200 some odd fantasy points in your lineup. And like no one gives you a better shot at doing that than a Mahomes Tyreek Hill stack at reasonable ownership. Yeah, this is it. I'm perfectly fine using Mecole Hardman as the second player. What do you like? I guess, Steve, what do you think? Are you like, is the pricing so that you can't double stack the Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce? Because at that point you're like asking the Chiefs, hey, could you put up 45 today because of their pricing? I go back and forth on this. I don't really have a solid answer. Steve, what do you think about that double stack?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. The one thing that I think you can do is, because Mahomes is so expensive, he really needs to have a huge game to pay off. So you can a little bit more afford Tyreek Hill and Kelsey together. Like if it was, Tyreek Hill and Kelsey on a team with Carson Wentz that, that we were talking earlier, I think it's really hard for him to be able to pay that off. But I think that with Mahomes and the way that he can throw, I think you do have a good shot at that. It's probably tougher the bigger the tournament you get into. Like if you're in the Millie Maker, the big one, maybe it's not as ideal to do that one. But I did have a lineup that finished fourth in the $4,000 Millie Maker, I think it was, in week 1 that had the same stack. So I think it's possible as you go down in the tournament size, maybe if you're in like the 5,000 or 10,000 people type tournaments, then I think it's fine. But yeah, it gets a little bit tougher as you go up there. But just Mahomes is just so good that I think that he can really break it down with these guys. Tyreek Hill is probably one of the best, if not the best receiver in the league right now. There's just so many really good ones. It's hard to really argue who is number one. And Kelsey is, surely the number one overall tight end. So you got like the best quarterback in the league with 2 of the best pass catchers. It's just a really dangerous option. One other guy I'll throw out there that you could use as kind of a pivot against those guys is CEH. So his price is way down at 4,800. If we're talking about misguided pricing a little bit, I feel like that is egregiously low for him on this offense. It could very easily be that Mahomes and Hill and Kelsey move the ball down the field and it's CEH that's getting the touchdowns. And that could really be a way to save some money for your lineup and still have a huge amount of upside. I don't think that, he kind of gave the game away a little bit at the end. So there is some risk that they don't want to get him heavily involved, but I don't see that that's going to be the case quite yet anyways. So I think I want to ride with him again as another pivot type option.
Just got really sad news that Mike Taglieri passed away. The Fantasy Pros. That's awful. Were you guys familiar with Tags?
Yeah, I saw that this morning. If you want to help the family, Fantasy Pros tweeted out a link to help support, I would assume funding costs after that. So if you want to help the family, just check that out.
Oh God, yeah. I didn't see his wife's tweet until right now. That's awful. You said there's a link somewhere?
I think Fantasy Pros, the official Fantasy Pros Twitter, tweeted out a link to help financially support the family.
Oh, okay. Damn.
Yeah,
Rest in peace, Tags. Yeah, that's really tough.
He was so good. For sure.
He was amazing, dude. I did a few shows with him. That guy he's one of the best out there. There's no doubt about it. Like Tags, when it came to fantasy analysis and the amount of just sheer work that dude churned out was second to none. So that's really sad. All right. I don't want to just like jump back into fantasy, but we kind of have to talk about these games. I'm sure we'll talk more about Tags for sure going forward, but God, that's awful. He wasn't old at all. Kyle, the Lamar Jackson and Detroit, I've had trouble with this game in the sense of Lamar Jackson is just a dual threat cheat code. Marquise Brown has actually looked spectacular to start the season, and he is questionable. We'll keep an eye on that. He turned in a limited practice yesterday, and that whole team feels banged up right now. Mark Andrews hasn't been good at all. But he's still there, and he's still their number 2. Sammy Watkins has been pretty impressive just in terms of overall volume of targets. And then you've got Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray, Devonta Freeman in the backfield. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this game. What I want to know from you is, I am going to do it anyway, but can I skinny stack Lamar with Marquise Brown or the Mark Andrews here and just run no run back in large field tournaments and hope that a lot of the volume or the 1 or 2 passing touchdowns goes to Brown? Can I run it back with TJ Hawkinson, who has been one of the most elite tight ends through the first couple weeks of the year? How do you target a strange game like this where Detroit's defense is not only bad, but egregious, but their offense has actually been serviceable enough to make games fun for a shootout environment?
Yeah, I think especially what's interesting is the Baltimore defense. PFF right now has them ranked, I believe, 12th, which is it's fine, but like they're playing like an average defense, and then they have already lost Justin Houston, I believe Brandon Williams in the center of the defensive line, and maybe some other guys also banged up coming this game on defense. Well, I know they began the week with 4 guys, 4 of which were starters, DNPs. Houston and Brandon Williams are 2 of them. So they're losing talent on defense after already coming out the year a little slow. And we've seen the Lions like play okay. Like, I think it was probably overblown just how much like Jared Goff was just like a high school toddler man who couldn't do anything. And Sean McVay was out there wearing his helmet for him. Like, Jared Goff is a perfectly mediocre quarterback. And that's what he's been doing, is just doing enough to get his guys the ball. And especially when their target tree is so uniquely distributed. It's basically TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, and Jamal Williams, maybe some Quintez Cephas. They also lost Tyrell Williams to a concussion. He didn't play last week, and then they put him on IR. So the target tree on the Lions side is condensed enough, and they're playing well enough. They're not like Jets, where they're a truly disgusting team, that I think I'd probably mandatory run back one of them. I'm just more comfortable running it back with a running back in this case. Whereas a team like, like Jonathan Taylor, I'm probably not as inclined. Like, I think when Jonathan Taylor wins, it's because his team is able to give him 30 carries. That's not the case with Swift. So I'm more comfortable using a running back as the run back. TJ Hawkinson, perfectly fine as well. Quintez Cephas, sneaky. I would say one of those three guys I would mandate in any Lamar Jackson lineups. The thing I most like about Lamar Jackson this week is I think people are, I guess, we're probably just going to mostly play him naked. As if I still work here. You guys have pretty low.
Feel free, man.
Yeah.
Just like old times.
Yeah, you guys have low ownership, at least reasonably low, like sub 7% on both Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, both of whom are pretty integral pieces of the offense, especially Marquise Brown, like actually just looking like I don't want to degrade what he did last year, but he looked miscast last year as a team's number one receiver. He's playing much better now in that role this year. So the target tree is condensed enough that I'm not worried about like these ancillary pieces outside of maybe Sammy Watkins picking up the touchdowns, the air yards. So I feel like this is another spot where, because of how condensed it is, you can cover all of your bases with like 10 lineups, whatever the combination of 3 guys in the Lions is and 2 guys plus Lamar Jackson. So I think we're going to get reasonable Lamar Jackson ownership, but it looks like he's going to be naked, and it looks like the run backs aren't popular. So I think of all the quarterbacks who are popular that I'm willing to go to, he's the one where it's most easy to get unique with, because I guess it's just a lot of naked Lamar Jackson ownership.
I don't know, Steve, maybe you could answer that question. I'm actually fine running Lamar Jackson and like Marquise Brown or whoever without anybody even on a run back option this week.
Yeah, I think in general, you can, in the right situation, especially in a smaller contest or a super huge one, go with a Lamar Jackson naked option. But in general, I do think it does make plenty of sense. Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown both are guys that are heavily enough involved that I think that they can get there. And if you really have a huge upside game from Jackson, it's probably going to be with one of those 2 guys along the way. So I think that is definitely the preferred option, I would say. And there are so many run back options on the Detroit side just because the pricing is pretty nice. Again, it's not a huge team total with Detroit, but Baltimore's defense is not Baltimore of old. So I know they still kind of get thought of that way, but it's definitely more of an offensive team nowadays. And I think you could run it back. Swift certainly makes a lot of sense. I think he's going well under owned. He hasn't had the most exciting start to the season. And I think that Hawkinson in particular is really nice. You wouldn't want to run back Hawkinson with Mark Andrews, because I don't think it makes a ton of sense to go 2 tight ends by any means, but Hawkinson's price at 5,200, getting about 90% of the snaps. And Goff, just as these guys were just saying, I think Goff has been really nice. He held his own against the Packers until that game just kind of got out of hand, and he had to just get super aggressive, and he just couldn't keep up at that point. But overall, I mean, that first half, he was looking as good as an average quarterback or better. So I think that's a really, a pretty good spot to go to. And I like Hawkinson in cash on DraftKings as well. I think that's a pretty reasonable approach to take.
All right, quickly, Steve, because we still have a lot to get through here. Are you willing to run Lamar Jackson with 2 of his pass catchers this week?
I would probably not do with 2 of them. I would say no.
I don't feel great about it either. Yeah, I don't. And then Kyle, what about running backs quickly in this backfield? Like, can you take shots on Tyson Williams and just hope that he breaks one, or is that price point a little bit prohibitive for you on a big slate like this?
Yeah, I don't really see the need to get to any of this backfield. Like, the part of the backfield I want is just Lamar Jackson, who I think it's reasonable to project to have an even higher share of his team's like backfield carries. Unlike, you say Josh Allen, his carries are going to probably primarily come on scrambles, especially now that he's not running quite as much. Whereas Lamar Jackson is going to lead the league in design runs every single week. He is a literally part of the backfield. I project him to have a higher percentage of the backfield's carries of the yardage because they're without their running backs 1, 2, and 3, unfortunately, to start the year and finish the year because they're all gone. So the backfield part that I want is just Lamar Jackson.
So here's the crazy thing, Kyle, and I want to talk about Arizona, Jacksonville, 8-point dogs, 51.5-point total. The fun, and DeAndre Hopkins is obviously a game time decision with those rib injury. I would assume this is just a pain management thing. I mean, when you're dealing with that type of injury, like, does he play or not? Hopkins usually finds a way to play. So we'll see how that turns out. But I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking, all right, they're 8-point dogs, but you got a 51.5-point total. Jacksonville's 22-point implied total really isn't that low for a team that's looked as bad as they have through the first 2 weeks. The passing volume is just so insane here in games where last week, not so much against Denver, but 51 in week 1. And on the other side, Kyler Murray's been amazing. You just don't know outside of DeAndre Hopkins who's going to get targeted, whether it's going to be Rondale Moore, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, Chase Edmonds out of the backfield. Like, there's so much uncertainty here, but this actually feels like one of those games, assuming Arizona's secondary actually hasn't been challenged yet, and I don't really think they have, that could get crazy. But how do we place any faith in Jacksonville? Can we look to Marvin Jones again at his ownership? Can we go to a DJ Shark? What are your thoughts here on both sides of this game? And then, Steve, same question to you.
Yeah, I don't think you need to, especially on a slate with like so many teams that we project really have that, like the Chiefs has the potential to drop 40, like Jacksonville, like they have the potential to drop 22 on a good day, given the way they've played. But the thing is, as you said, the passing volume, especially as we saw in week 1, is enough that even if they don't drop, 35 points, Marvin Jones back-to-back games with 100 air yards. DJ Chark 7th in air yards through 2 weeks. Jones is like 3rd. They are just hucking it. And it's because when you have, Laviska Shenault and James Robinson each getting 2 8-out targets, the rest of them are just all downfield, and it's all to 2 individual guys. So I think the run backs in this game are perfect because they have such high volatility in a good way. They're cheap, high volatile players that are both in line for 100+ yard games because at least their team has used them with the air yards as if they are, the potential for 100-yard games. I don't think I'm going to Trevor Lawrence just because I don't think he has really the raw point upside to match even like Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones has like a 100-yard rushing game in his range of outcomes. So I don't think you need to go down to Trevor Lawrence, but I do think the Jags run backs, it's just 2 guys for me. I love Laviska Shenault as a player, but they are literally using him like Deebo Samuel last year with like a James White average depth of target. Among players with 15 targets, he has the lowest depth of target for non-running backs, that is. So I'm not really interested in Laviska Shenault, unfortunately, because I think he's a good player. So that's just 2 guys to run it back with. They're both super volatile. And on the other side, I thought this was super interesting. This is from Squirrel Patrol, but the top teams by DraftKings in terms of odds to lead the slate Sunday in scoring are Kansas City and Arizona, then Baltimore, then Seattle. None of that Los Angeles Tampa Bay game in the top 4. They come, 5th and then a little later down. But anytime that a sports book is telling me that these are the teams we think are going to lead the slate in scoring, I'm sure you can't get a ton of money down on this like weird specific bet. So it's not the most accurate you could possibly be, but it's a good way to move in the right direction. The fact that the Cardinals are number 2, and I don't think they'll be the second most popular team to stack. They're expensive, sure. It makes me all the more interested in playing them.
Me too. But Steve, the one thing I've said the past week or whatever is, you're basically just spinning a wheel with Arizona for anybody outside of DeAndre Hopkins and hoping it lands on the right player, and then when it does and you land on Rondale Moore from last week, you're in business because they're going to score points. It's just, where do we go outside of Hopkins, assuming he's active? If he's not active, my God. And then I think Arizona actually probably becomes a lot chalkier because even their peripheral guys are actually good enough to put up really big games against a really bad defense.
Yeah, I think if Hopkins is out, then it really opens up a lot because he is so heavily targeted. He's playing almost all the snaps. He's getting all the attention. He didn't have a great game last week, but I'm guessing, I don't know when his injury happened exactly. I kept hoping that he was going to, I had a lot of good lineups with him. I was hoping he was going to do something at the end, but unfortunately, I didn't realize he was injured and hobbling around. So if he is not playing, I really like Rondale Moore again. He's ticking up his targets and snaps a little bit. He was up to 46% of the snaps last week. AJ Green was getting targeted a lot down the stretch. last game. He was targeted a lot last year, just wasn't very productive with them. So I think both of those guys could be really good plays in that case. Well, luckily that's a 1:00 game, so we should know and not have to take too many chances on that. I am a little bit worried about Hopkins. Just the way he finished last game wasn't super encouraging. So if he isn't, or even if he is playing, I might be a little bit hesitant to go as heavy on him as what I normally am, but I would still take some chances, especially if his ownership dips. If we don't hear about this in like a Schefter overnight drop, I think he is going to be pretty low owned, and that's when you really want to take advantage of that. Couldn't agree more on some of the run back options, Marvin Jones and
DJ Chark.
Shark, yeah. both of those guys are great ones for run back. Lawrence is chucking the ball down the field really well. I think you can definitely have a huge amount of upside, so I think that is the way to go. And yeah, I think that is the perfect way to play this. I think you can go with Lawrence a little bit. A few years back when we didn't have guys like Kyler Murray and Mahomes really just like destroying the slate every week, he would have been a perfect guy because this price point would have been great. But now there's just so many guys that are getting so many points, it's a little bit tougher for him to get there. So what you would need is a bunch of other higher priced wide receivers that really break the slate, and you need him to get them to go with Lawrence. So I don't think he's a great play, but it is something that could work out still, just not probably one of my favorite plays.
Yeah, and the good thing is it's not like if you play Lawrence, you don't have some decent options in the passing game. I mean, DJ Shark can still have big games. Marvin Jones has proven that, every year you just forget about him, and then there he is again with another, handful of touchdowns and a bunch of yards in the early weeks of the season. So, yeah, I don't see it crazy at all. Hit that thumbs up, too, if you guys haven't done so yet. Appreciate you hanging out with us on a Saturday afternoon, getting ready for week 3. And if you haven't checked out Prize Picks yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. I mean, seriously, everyone I talk to always says they love it. They love the way it looks. They love the simplicity of it. There's no MME. You're not going up against sharks or optimizers or anything like that. What it is, in case you were curious, it's a daily prop-based site where I have contests daily prop-based contests, I should say. And if you want to get started, you haven't checked it out yet, I'm going to tell you how to play there in a second. It's very simple. I mean, you'd have to be dumb not to understand, but I will explain it anyway. They have a instant deposit match bonus of up to $100 when you sign up and deposit using the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO. So that's already a win there. But you pick 2, 3, 4, or 5 players available on the board to go over or under their projected scores. So you're kind of building a lineup, right? Or you could consider it like a parlay. That would make not really. It's a hybrid of everything you've got at DFS and in the betting world. But if you were to pick a 5-player lineup correctly, you can net up to 10x your entry fee. So you got baseball, basketball, football, WNBA, even esports, but all we care about right now is football. However, if you're looking to get into some other action, you can do cross-sport plays, right? So if you want to pick 5, you could pick 3 from the NFL, 1 from is the WNBA happening right now?
It was happening the same time as the Thursday night football game, and I heard it was a good game. So you were better off watching it than that terrible Thursday night game.
Yeah, debatable. But the WNBA, if you want to do that, NBA, anything, whatever's available. That all I'm saying is like I think WNBA is in the playoffs right now.
I know it was like a playoff contention game. I don't know if it was like the last game of the regular season or if it was just for a playoff spot. But yeah, they're headed to the playoffs, I think.
I wonder if there's some of those props are soft on some of the smaller markets. Like, I don't know. Anyway,
they typically are.
For sure.
You would think so. Check it out. Use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO. Get $100 match deposit bonus when you sign up. Prize Picks. Download it in the App Store. Go to prizepicks.com or the Google Play Store. Wherever makes you feel better. All right, so let's do this, boys. We got a few more to get into, and I do want to thank Nick for the super chat. There's 2 super chats. I'll go to you first, Steve. We'll keep these quick, and then to you, Kyle. Thoughts on Carr and Waller with no run back in a 1 lineup build on FanDuel, assuming we're talking tournament here, Steve?
I think that makes sense. Waller in particular has just been a target monster so far, so I have no problems going with him. It'll make your build a little bit different also because I think that a lot of people are going to want to go to either Kelsey or pay down a fair amount. So I like that idea.
All right. And then Kyle from Greg, he says, favorite wide receiver under 4,600 on DK, Osborne, ? Hardman, Chenault, DraftKings tournament. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, so one of the other final games, I like all of this is a slate, interestingly, I like all of the good games, except for one. I'm just probably just Xing out Rams Bucks and saying if this game scores 60, I lose. We head on to next week. If any other game scores, if the predictably high scoring game scores 60, I have a chance. So because of that, KJ Osborne, I think a very interesting play in a game that will probably be of the high scoring affairs, the projected to be high scoring affairs, the lowest owned. Just like, I think Russell Wilson comes in below probably Herbert, below Mahomes, obviously below both sides of the LA Tampa Bay game. So as a run back, I think he's perfectly fine. Although Justin Jefferson seeing over half the team's air yards is like the ultimate buy low spot on him. But yes, I would say KJ Osborne of those guys.
So that game, perfect segue, is really interesting because Cooper Kupp actually has the highest boom rating in our boom bust tool, which, by the way, if you use the promo code, or Jordan, are we doing the strategy show on? NFL strategy show, all one word, all caps, get 25% off everything on the site for the first week. Awesemo plus platinum. All these tools we're talking about, created and used by the #1 DFS player out there, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. Shout your boy out on Twitter too. Shoot him a congratulations. Just tied the knot yesterday. But yeah, I mean, Kyle, it's like these guys are projecting really high, and so is Godwin and Cooper Kupp. But I kind of see what you mean here because with many of these other games, you don't have two defenses that are very capable of stifling an offense. And yes, it's a Tom Brady-led offense, and McVay's offense right now looks spectacular. But is it not out of the realm of possibility that this game actually underwhelms in a big way and these defenses show up and, strong run defense, strong secondary play from Jalen Ramsey and the Rams? I don't know. It feels like maybe you're on the right track. If there's a high scoring projected game to fade, maybe this is the one to come underweight on. Explain it to me.
The only thing I have to say is that there are a bunch of games. I'll read off the totals. The Chiefs game, 54.5 total is 1 point lower. 55. I mean, maybe this depends on what book you're looking at. 55 for the Seattle game. It's the same. They all have roughly the same odds of scoring a ton of points, yet it's because of pricing. The prices are more advantageous for the most part in the Tampa Bay game, but it's not that much better. They're not like, Cooper Kupp 5,200 on DraftKings or something. It's still expensive, but because the pricing is a little more advantageous, and maybe just people's biases, we've seen them play very well. You guys have Cooper Kupp, most popular wide receiver, Chris Godwin, second most popular wide receiver, Robert Woods, fourth most popular wide receiver. If you're telling me that like how many duped times are you going to get the start of a lineup that is Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin? You just gain no relative value if that stack goes off, and it has roughly the same probability of going off. You need maybe a few less points because it's less expensive, but it has roughly the same probability as my Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Justin Jefferson stack that is going to be fractions and fractions of the ownership. It's not any indictment of this game. I think Vegas correctly has it pinned as one of the most obvious games to score a lot of points, but DFS ownership has it as a clear tier above the rest, which is just not. Vegas would say they're all very similar in their odds to go off. So I'm just playing the ownership game. If this game is going to have all of the popular wide receivers, literally 3 of the top 4, I'm just not going to play it.
Steve, why is it that Godwin's ownership and boom score and everything is projected so much higher than Mike Evans? I mean, this always kind of confounds me. He's like, Mike Evans is projecting at 6.5%, and he's only $200 more than Godwin, who's projecting considerably higher than that on the same team with the same quarterback who throws to the open man.
Yeah, what that normally tells you is that it's the week to go to Mike Evans, right? Because they are not.
That's where I was leading this conversation.
Yeah, they're not that much different. You have kind of like a 50-50 shot if one of them is better than the other. They're both similar talent, I would say. Maybe Mike Evans is more talented. He's just a little bit more inconsistent, so people are a little bit hesitant to pick on him a little bit more, but his price is pretty much the same, 6,300 versus 6,100. When Godwin's ownership is about 3 times the amount, I think I definitely would prefer to go to Mike Evans in that situation. And I do agree exactly with what Kyle was saying on our show yesterday. I did with Josh. We were building a DK cash lineup, and it just fits so well to plug in Cooper Kupp, to plug in Stafford. Guys like Woods, we even mentioned, I don't think we had him in our final lineup, but it's just a really simple way to build a cash lineup that's going to push their ownership even higher, because people like to just take their cash lineups a lot of time and just tweak it a little bit. So I think this is going to be potentially even more popular than what we're seeing in our current projections. So I'm also off this game in general. I think you could potentially maybe go the other route with like just kind of flip everyone that we're talking about. Go to Mike Evans, go to Woods instead of Cup, go to Fournette instead of the passing game. I think those are ways that you could maybe get this game a little bit different if you really want to stick to this game. But in general, I would say either do that or go off of it completely.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to play this game, like you guys have Van Jefferson pretty low owned, and it does make sense as it's like KJ Osborne pivot, because you guys have KJ Osborne as the pay down option people are going to. Like I would like literally minimum both of Mike Evans, Van Jefferson, because you're just gaining so little value by playing anyone outside of those guys. Those are the two like good pivots, I think, in the passing game. Yeah, like Ronald Jones is fine. He's a perfectly fine running back.
Don't speak his name. Every time I play that guy, it's just death. Every single time.
He could get the. I
know.
saw 15 touches last week.
That's why I play him. It just never ever works.
That's okay though. That's what you need to. I feel like that is the good mentality to have. Like, I hate playing this guy. Let's get 20% of him this week. You know, it's the Sammy Watkins, the Marquez Valdez, Scantling. Yep. One of these times, those guys will pay you off. This could certainly be a Leonard Fournette week. Yeah,
it was Steve with T.Y. Hilton last year, right? Like you and Alex, you just kept playing him, and eventually he had those games. But you know,
I was broke by then. But
I was gonna say it hurt for the first 10 weeks, for sure. All right, we only got a couple of minutes here, so anything that we missed, and great stuff today, Kyle and Steve. Anything that we missed, tomorrow we got 4 straight hours to check out, and be sure to check out everything Kyle's doing over at NBC Sports Edge. And follow him at, is it still Kyle Tweets Here, right? Nothing's changed.
That is correct.
At Kyle Tweets Here. Follow Steve at Steve Buzzard, myself at Lafayette_D, LOUGHY_D. I did want to talk about Odell and that game and Fields and Dalvin Cook and all of that. But if Dalvin Cook's out, play Alexander Madison. How about that? Even though I know they jack his price point up, but you know, big volume. Nevertheless, all of that tomorrow. We'll hit on everything we didn't get to. We got to a lot of great stuff today, but we close it with this. Our top, and we got to be quick. Top pivot, top pivot. Sorry, hold on. Top fade, top pivot of the week, and then your favorite prop or really any bet, sides, total, doesn't matter. Steve, what do you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say Chris Godwin is my fade. I don't really have a whole lot of interest in him. I think you could go the other way with Mike Evans, like we were just talking about, or Fournette. So I'm going to kind of repeat myself there a little bit. And those are the two guys that I'm going to pivot to there. For a bet of the week, one thing I want to kind of tout a little bit is our futures bets that we have available now. They've really been doing quite well so far. Baltimore has been pretty high on our chances to win the conference. We talked about that a little bit on our Thursday night show was it last week? Yeah, I think last week. So what I want to do is I want to kind of shout out the 49ers to win the conference. Right now, we're showing them at about 17% of the time out of our 100,000 simulations that they can win the NFC. You're getting a plus 650 odds on them. I think that is a pretty good bet for that team. A lot of people are just scared of the quarterback situation, but overall that team is really good. And Garoppolo is looking a little bit better. And if he ends up not doing as well, then they still have a nice backup as well. So I like that bet. If you're feeling really risky, we got him winning the Super Bowl at about 9% of the time. And at plus 1,400, that's not too bad of a bet either. I think that's a little bit bigger of a risk because there's a lot of really good teams in the AFC. But yeah, I like them to win the conference at their current odds.
Jordan, we're up against it, but they moved that show back to 3:00, right? All right, cool. Kyle, go ahead. Top fade, pivot, and favorite prop or bet of the week.
Fade, I'm just gonna double down with Steve. I'll just cross out that game. Like literally in Fantasy Cruncher, you can gray out the games. I'm probably just gonna gray that game out, not play any of it. For me, that most importantly comes down to both Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. So I probably won't play either of them. Pivot to a Russell Wilson stack with a Justin Jefferson run back. Justin Jefferson, a top 10 or maybe top 15 weighted opportunity rating, just hasn't converted on it. KJ Osborne running super hot on his efficiency. I think he's a fine play, but Justin Jefferson is just like the ultimate pivot. And I don't have a fancy 100,000 Sims bet to make, but I do have Jared Goff under 9.5 rushing yards. The dude's averaged like 5.3 rushing yards throughout his career. He's hit the under in like 73% of his games, I believe. Do we expect that he just hit the gym all of a sudden and became Lamar Jackson as he went to Detroit? Like, no, maybe his average jumps up to 7, 8, but that's still, a pretty big percentage off 9.5.
I love it. All right. So I'll go a little bit off the board here, fellas, because we talked about the Rams and Bucks game a lot, and I agree. But I'm going to go with the fade of, and by fade, we're not talking about just having 0% across the board, but
I am.
You actually are. That is true. Yeah, you probably will. Not even one-offs, huh?
I actually think Mike Evans, and given the ownership projection on Van Jefferson, maybe those are interesting pivots. My only problem is it still ends up correlating with the game environment and with Stafford and with Tom Brady. But those actually, I do think are reasonable pivots. Maybe I put them back in the pool. Yeah,
and it doesn't hurt that Van Jefferson has that 50, 60-yard touchdown upside, even if you only were to grab a couple of balls. But I'm going to go with the fade of Clyde Edwards-Helaire because his ownership keeps creeping up throughout the week. And almost an identical price pivot on DraftKings is Javonte Williams. I mean, you don't have to love this guy, and I'm not enamored with him either. He hasn't been massive. He hasn't been super effective, but listen, he's only seen a couple fewer carries or a couple fewer overall touches than Melvin Gordon, and he's actually carried the ball more than Melvin Gordon through the first 2 weeks. I think you're going to start to see more of a shift towards Javonte Williams. They traded up to get this guy in the second round. Not to mention, they're 10.5-point favorites against the Jets team, who was a quarterback that was picked off 4 times last week. So with that said, I think you could get a situation where you have controlled time of possession, great field position, and even if Melvin Gordon is still worked in, even if it's a split, I anticipate a lot of opportunities for Javonte Williams in this game. So I'll parlay that into a prop as well, over 53.5 rushing yards. I don't think that's all that much in this specific matchup. So Javonte Williams at that price on DraftKings, 53.5 rushing yards as well. I'll take them both, baby. I'll take them both. Anyway, Kyle, anything else you want to throw out there, promote before you go? It's been fun being back with you on a show today.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's been a while. If you want to check out the stuff we have going on at NBC Sports, you can follow me on Twitter and I retweet all of my stuff. And if you want a premium sub, we have tons of great season-long tools, DFS content, premium content. Use promo code Kyle10. I think it gets you 10% off. I think that's what that code is good for. So use that or just follow me on Twitter, interact with me. It's really the engagements that feed my family.
Yeah, your family though.
Well, just a girlfriend but like every time I post a tweet and it gets like 3 likes, she's like, 1 more of those, son, and you're out of here.
You got a live-in girlfriend now?
Live it? Yeah, we've been together. We've lived together for a while.
Really? Maybe I'm thinking of Gajaski, who has
he doesn't have space in his apartment for another human.
A small hot plate and TV on top of the microwave. That's mega. Anyway, Steve, take us out, man. Final thoughts before we head out of here.
Yeah, I think the big thing, definitely check out all of our content. We got a ton going tomorrow, a ton going over next weekend, everything, every sport, nonstop. But the big thing to keep in mind for this week is we don't know as much as we think we know. 2 weeks in, very small sample size. Be aggressive on some of your stances. And if someone is getting over or under owned and you think they have upside to do something else, then go for it because everyone is group thinking right now.
That'll do it for us. Thanks as always for hanging out, guys. Remember, follow Steve at Steve Buzzard, Kyle at Kyle Tweets here, myself at Loppy _D, LOUGHY _D. And if you want to check out everything we've got over at Awesemo, like I said, all the tools we reference every single day on these shows for every sport, not just NFL, go to awesemo.com/join. Check it out. And if you just want to do a week, Awesemo Plus Platinum, use the promo code NFL Strategy Show, all one word, all caps. We'll catch you back here next week, but really catch you back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 9 Eastern, kicking things off, 4 straight hours leading up to lock. We'll catch you back here tomorrow morning. Peace.